I will tell you, we're made to be holistic. We're made to be balanced as human beings. So when we press that dopamine receptor for too long, too strong, there's a balancing effect. And that dopamine, which is the heightened drug, gets reacted with this like depression, sadness, because we've been pressing that happy button for too long. That there's kind of a piper to pay. And so we have to have that equal. And so nobody wants to feel that stuff. But when we do, it gets really intense because we've been pressing on this for too much. So we have to find balance in that. And that's where movement comes in. That's where talking to friends and having that communication, which is more than just putting your FaceTime facing the ceiling and talking, right? Our brains are social organs. They have to be around other brains. So while it's fun to FaceTime people and it's great, it's not the same as being in the same room and actually talking about stuff.
Get ready for the next iteration of you on your path to becoming wealthy. On this show, you'll get the insider's view on wealth creation, the class none of us got taught in school, with my co-host, daughter, and beginning investor, Sophia Bosch. And now, let's get started. Welcome to the Becoming Wealthy podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Bosch.
And your co-host, Sophia Bosch.
And today we have an amazing special guest. And his name is Adam Brooks. Adam is a speaker. He's also the co-founder of Drive-A-Log, co-owner at Gold Key Comics. And you're an adjunct professor at Rio Salado College, and you basically teach communications, right?
Yeah, I teach at Rio Salado in the communication department and at Phoenix College in the education department.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Sophia, are you excited to have Adam here?
Yes, I love Adam. He's always been in my life in some way. I don't remember a time with him not being there, which is...
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. You've known me since, little backstory, we know each other from, oh my gosh, I was in my mid-20s.
I didn't want to say the year.
I don't want to say the year either. In my mid-20s, and I basically, your dad and I, we were already, I think, in that first year, flipping about 60 pieces of land per year. And I would go to the bank and get basically cashier's check to send either, to the title companies or to send to the owners if we were doing an in-house closing. And guess who was the person that was writing all those cashier's checks for me at the bank?
It was me.
It was Adam.
Spoiler alert.
And he was a college student. He was about to graduate, from NYU. NYU, no.
NAU.
No, NAU.
Yeah.
I wish I
We
might.
were looking at NYU.
Yeah. They all start to run together. I get it.
Yes. And I remember that you even helped us when we decided to grow basically and 10x our dispo of our land. He came and helped us at the land auctions. We would have basically about 20 realtors that would sit with, customers that would bid and would win the bidding for that particular item. And then basically they would either bring cash, credit card, and if it was cash, basically it was Adam's domain to pretty much oversee, a specific group of real estate agents that were going through the closing transaction with our buyers.
And I think I had my notary by then, so I was also notarizing.
Yeah, you were notarizing all our docs.
Yeah. So my name's probably all over your stuff somewhere.
It is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the backstory. Did you know that, or no? You didn't know.
I don't think I know that, like the auction part.
Yeah. So that's how we met Adam, and then in some way, shape, or form, he's been part of your life. I know we even requested that you come and to Sophia's quinceañera and give her a little bit of a little mini speech or prayer as to what to do with this new stage of her life that she was stepping into. And so you've always had a really a big gift in being able to communicate with her, and I think part of it is because that's kind of your jam, that's your specialty, right?
Yeah. Well, what's funny is at the bank, my boss gave me 3 days off a week because she said, I don't want you to be at the bank anymore. I think you're destined for more, which was very insightful of her. And so I became a substitute teacher. And that's when I started working with high school students. And then I realized this is what I wanted. I long-term subbed in a special ed class. And kids with dyslexia, minor learning disabilities, I thought these are my people. I was an ADHD kid growing up, and I was like, this is it. And so that's when I left to pursue teaching full time. And so, yeah, it kind of has helped seeing kids grow up and being able to kind of communicate on that level, because I'm basically just a big kid anyway, to be fair.
I mean, I wish I would be able to, do what you do. I mean, I think we have a good, communication style going on and just connection. But I cannot forget that one time where you came and you sat us at the table as a family, and we went through your drive-alog, one of the cards. Can you explain a little bit what drive-alog is and the intention behind it? So
while I was a teacher, I realized that there was a lot of things happening with students and teens that they were struggling with. And so I started doing more speaking, doing assemblies at schools, working with professional development for teachers, trying to help them connect with kids better in a healthier way. Because education went academic, and I saw a need for social emotional stuff. And Arizona became number 2 in the nation for teen suicides, unfortunately. And I wanted to get families to talk again. I grew up in a family that didn't talk much. And so I thought, I want to help communicate. So I made these cards that really helped families to be proactive instead of reactive. The research says kids will talk for longer and stronger if they aren't forced to make direct eye contact. So in the car is a perfect time to ask and have difficult conversations. So the cards were like, what would you do if somebody asked you to vape in the bathroom? Or what would you do if, you were feeling sad for no reason? Who would you talk to? And so it just gave parents an access to ask questions that sometimes we forget to ask kids. You know what I mean? Things have changed so much. So that's kind of how it started. So I made 3 versions: elementary school, middle school, and high school version, with 4 wild cards where parents have to answer the question about their childhood. So they can kind of engage, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how it started.
Which is fantastic. And it was fantastic for us up until the point where we were driving Sophia to school. Now she comes back from school, and I'd be like, Sophia, how was your day today? Oh, it was good. And so how can I go from having a one-word answer to actually hearing more about her day? How could I communicate better with her?
Well, the research says that the more strategic and specific the question is, the easier it is to answer.
Okay.
So she's been at school all day. Her mind is exhausted, right? And you say, how was your day? So now she has to think of, what was the good? What was the bad? What happened here? What happened there? What am I willing to share? What am I not willing to share? And by that time, she's like, fine, I'm tired. My brain's already working overtime. Instead of saying, hey, tell me something fun that happened in math class. Okay, now I've got 40 minutes, 50 minutes to think of, okay, something, this one kid said this answer and it was really, right? So now we're giving her focus to where she doesn't have to work so hard in her brain to find a thing to answer with. And so it's more about being strategic and being specific about the questions than it is about, how was your day? What'd you do? What'd you learn? I don't know. Stuff.
Okay.
I don't know. That's what I've done. That's what the research says. So I think that's typically the case.
That makes sense. That, like, how you spelled it out, like, that would make sense. Like, because Papa does also sometimes ask. You ask the initial question, and then Papa asks, has a follow-up, and that one's so much easier to answer because it's much more specific.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
So this open-ended because I'm thinking, let me give her, like, something to pick from. Versus,
I know, but she's had something to pick from all day. With every kid, with every class, with everything. And so by now, her brain's done. She's tired. She needs to kind of numb out a little bit. And so that's really kind of helpful.
Now, Adam, taking this in a different direction, I know that you, you go out there and speak quite a bit at larger companies and how to communicate, how to deal, how to work with the younger generation, you know?
I wrote a book called Understanding Millennials, Tips and Tricks on Working with This Generation, which is just a way to incorporate multi-generational workforces more effectively.
Yeah. So going towards that, then why, for example, is this new generation, which is not even the millennial, what do you call yourself?
Gen Z.
They're Gen Z, yeah.
What is so different from them to the previous, to millennial? Because I know you're a millennial.
I'm not, but that's
not
very
really?
sweet. I love that you think I'm so young.
Aren't you some of the
Yeah, I'm in that middle.
oldest?
I'm the oldest X.
Okay.
And so there's a little what we call micro generation.
Okay.
Which is between like 79 and like 85, 83.
Okay.
And they're called the Zennials, X millennials. And it's because we had technology, but it wasn't as prevalent as millennials.
Yeah.
So we got to play on the computer for 20 minutes on a Friday
Yeah.
at school, but I still went home and typed on a typewriter.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird in-between generation where we had MTV, but we had MTV with music. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't have it with all the shows. That was later. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an in-between micro-generation, they call it.
And so, what are the biggest differences now between that one and this one?
Yeah, so it's different because for a couple of reasons. One of them is Gen Z, it's not even like, do I understand technology or how do I feel about technology? It's been around forever. It's the only thing I know.
They're digital
Yeah,
natives.
Yeah, I was
they're
born-
digital natives.
I was born the same month the first iPhone came out.
That's
like-
insane. that
Or
you
like
said that.
just like a week apart.
Really?
Yeah. It usually comes out like
Do you have
September.
one? We should get you
Mid-September.
like a first generation iPhone for like,
it comes out
like, "I don't want
mid-September,
Oh, that's
and I
cool,
was
yeah.
born the first week of September. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I don't remember what I was going to say about that.
no.
Maybe something relating to device and usage of devices, or
Yeah.
Well, because the reality is that
I don't remember.
this is the
time
first
about it.
generation that won't know what a dial tone sounds like,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
there's certain things that they'll never experience. You know what a dial tone is?
I think
Cool,
I
cool, cool,
do.
cool, 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 cool.
I think I
My
do.
birthday was yesterday. And I feel really old now, so thanks. No, I'm just kidding. But you're right. There's things that you'll never experience that are just part of your everyday life.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, there in Honduras, Oma still has like a.
Oh, where
Rotary?
you have to, rotary.
Yeah. And so I knew how to use it, like turn the
Mm-hmm.
numbers such, but I didn't know that you had to pick up the phone first and then dial.
Yeah.
Because on your phone you like put in the number and then you put it to
And then
your
you hit
ear.
send. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so we have that. So
yes. Also,
based
I
on
didn't
that,
know. No one told me.
well, there's things like this generation will be the most multicultural generation we've ever had. They're also rivaling as one of the largest generations we've had.
okay,
Millennials are a little bit bigger, I think, than Gen Z. But they also have the largest impact. They're the most socially aware generation.
What Gen Z?
what do you mean by
No,
that?
Gen Z. So they've been able to see the world in their bedroom. And so they've become students of the world. So they've been able to see a lot of really vast, interesting things. They've become world travelers and they've never left their bedroom.
Yeah,
So they know what's happening.
is that good or is that sad? I don't know. I
So
feel
there,
like
this is where we
sad.
start talking about unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the unintended consequences, knowing more isn't always better.
Yeah,
Right? It's like WebMD.
yeah.
If I have a cough and I start
my
plugging
God.
it in, that's not
Sir,
great.
You're gonna
Yeah,
die.
you're gonna
Yeah,
die.
it's
You're
all
gonna
just
die.
ends with goodbye, right? That's everyone. You know, I'm like, I have an earache, and they're like, see ya.
So what do you think that they bring then to the table?
Well, what they bring to the table is a lot more compassion because they have seen things from a lot of different angles. But the other thing that they bring is boredom because they've seen so much that it takes a lot more to keep their interest. It takes a lot more to keep them engaged. We see a lot of this generation is a little bit wealthier than previous generations. I mean, they're going to Starbucks before high school. You know what I mean? And like bringing their
Yeah.
drinks. And it's like a $6 drink every day?
Or are they
When I was a
wealthier,
kid?
or is it their parents?
Well, that's the bigger question, right? Who's actually benefiting from that wealth?
Yeah.
Seems like it's the younger generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's really interesting because now we've got
That's
this
true.
idea that the assumption is there's more, I deserve this, I need to have it. And so there's a little bit of entitlement. There's not as much resilience. But resilience is a really interesting idea because that comes with strife and hardship. And I can't tell you how many parents I've met who, well-intentioned, wanted to remove every obstacle from their child's
right.
path, which is amazing, right? I wish I would have had more obstacles removed from my path. And yet, I am who I am today. I am
Because
the
of them.
entrepreneur I am today because of those obstacles.
Yeah.
I actually love that plot twist.
Yes.
Because that's the point at the story, in the story, when you watch a movie where in spite of this, this person is able to be in the making of the most beautiful story of their life, and so on and so forth.
So we need to add more obstacles into our children's past, is what I mean. And we see this in academics, in the current culture of our education with Gen Z. We see it with kind of the model of parenting and families with Gen Z. They talk about the millennials are the trophy generation. But what's really interesting, which is weird, because no millennials bought their own trophy ever. We bought it for them, and now we're mad that they want them. It's crazy, right? But when I look at Gen Z, I go to like my nephew's t-ball games and baseball games, and he's 14 years old, and they've got like full gear and walk-up songs and an $800 bat, and I'm like, what is happening? Like, I was like duct taping my shoes together as a kid, and so there's just a different approach to these things, and we have a lot of kids who are overwhelmed. They're stressed. They've got a lot of anxiety. This is the first generation, they say, that will not outlive their parents, which is interesting.
Shoot, Sophia. Look at you. I'm aging. Are you aging? No, let's talk about overwhelm and stress.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right on there. For example, last week we went on a college tour, and I didn't realize how competitive and what a process that application process is.
Yeah. The thing is, you didn't notice it, but I noticed it because I see all the videos, I see all the things, I have heard other people's experiences. And you just hadn't yet. That's why. Well,
you see it at school, and then you get on your Instagram, and your algorithm is that. Yeah. So you're getting fed all this extra stuff of like, oh my gosh, I just applied, and I didn't get into this.
Yeah, and I did this, and I still didn't get it. And I was like, uh-oh.
So how last I heard with the feeling of overwhelmed, because I know she came back, and for me, the trip was a little bit of like, there are some points that need to be filled.
Sure.
But it was mainly inspirational. I'm like, oh my God, look at the possibilities.
Yeah.
And I think Sophia saw the possibilities.
I saw it.
But it was almost just as big, the overwhelm of the process of getting there.
Well, the process is the process. There's, of course, some boxes that you, like, colleges, like, they want to see leadership things. Like, a few things that you need to check, but within that, like, you have to be authentic and be yourself. I think that where a lot of kids run into trouble with and get a lot of anxiety is that their parents expect them to get into those schools, one. Two, they expect them to have this whole resume of like all the things they've did, and if they also apply themselves in their authenticity and they still don't get in, they look at it, they blame it on themselves, like thinking self-worth? They don't like,
not enough?
Yeah, exactly, because how come I did all these things, but then they don't accept me?
I speak a lot about what we call the checklisted childhood, which is like, all right, at 3, we've got to apply for the right daycare to get the right thing, to get the right thing. And now I've got to go to this school, which is the right school, because this school will get them stepping stones here. And you've experienced that. Yeah. I know the schools you go to. Like, I get it. And there's a lot of pressure about that kind of stuff. And so your parents did a good job of letting you kind of, piano was rough, but
it still is.
Like, you better practice, right?
Oh, it's so bad.
But
my teacher yelled at me yesterday.
Really? Still? I remember going to your first recital.
Oh, really?
In your living room. It was amazing.
Oh, yes. I remember
that. Right? That's so funny. But what's interesting is they've done a good job of letting you kind of figure out like, oh, I'm good at this. I want to try this. I want to try that. A lot of times it's not. It's like, hey, you're going to play baseball, and I want you to be a baseball player. So you're just going to be on the traveling team. You don't have time to do anything else.
Yeah.
And so when I'm solely dedicated to this one ticket, and then that ticket doesn't work out, now what? I found my value. I found my worth in this one thing. Yeah. And now that didn't go through, so now I'm valueless, right? Yeah. And that's problematic. And that's where we see kids breaking down, hurting themselves, getting upset. It becomes problematic. And also you see kids trying to release that stress in unhealthy ways. Drugs, alcohol, escape, parties, all sorts of things. And so it's because we don't have a healthy release of all that pressure and all that anxiety.
What would be a healthy release?
Rock climbing, right? Yeah. It would be like physical movement, healthy dopamine. Whereas instead of like gaming, That's numbing.
Yeah.
Although up for a couple of, about 2 hours, it's actually not bad. It's pretty healthy. But when we start seeing kids game for 4 hours a day on a Saturday, that's
Yeah.
where we're pushing that dopamine too much. There's a great book called The Dopamine Nation. Really great. Talks about this idea. We're pushing too hard, too long, too strong on the dopamine receptors in our kids. And so there's other healthy things like going for a walk, reading a book you enjoy. There's a research that came out of the UK that said the number one stress reliever for kids is reading a book you love, which, no offense, doesn't mean, which I'm speaking to myself, doesn't mean business book. It doesn't mean self-help book. It means a poetry. It means a book you love, like putting yourself in the shoes of this character. Yeah, using your imagination. Yeah. That's exciting. YouTube, not so much. That's numbing. And so those things are really great.
I actually have lately been targeted by ads and because of the ad, I actually, clicked on the learn more. There is such a thing as, having so much interaction with your device to the point where you are have oversaturated levels of dopamine and actually require dopamine detox.
Yes.
And they were basically giving studies of how this is affecting people's nervous system, emotionally, how this is affecting physiologically as well, affecting their sleep, their ability to, pay attention, which, I mean, it's something that I even, with Sophia, often I'll be like, Sophia, how come you're studying and you have the laptop open, the book open, this open, and you're scrolling and there's music and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, what happened to you to people's ability to focus? It's almost like become a superpower to be able to focus because of this
say that we are now really great at multitasking, but there's a lot of people who will say that that's not real because we are doing shallow work. So there's a great book called Deep Work where they talk about how we're not disciplined enough to do really deep. Carl Jung, right? He locked himself into his cabin, which was for a year, to write his books because he wanted to do deep work on this idea that he had. We don't have that. We're doing it. We're just capturing things along the way. Like, oh, I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do this. And so it can be a lot.
Can this usage create actually ADHD in a person that did not have it to begin with?
Well, of course, it's a habit, right? You've created habits of like being distracted. Also, I will tell you, we're made to be holistic. We're made to be balanced as human beings. So when we press that dopamine receptor for too long, too strong, there's a balancing effect. And that dopamine, which is the heightened drug, gets reacted with this like depression, sadness, because we've been pressing that happy button for too long. That there's kind of a piper to pay. And so we have to have that equal. And so nobody wants to feel that stuff. But when we do, it gets really intense because we've been pressing on this for too much. So we have to find balance in that. And that's where movement comes in. That's where talking to friends and having that communication, which is more than just putting your FaceTime facing the ceiling and talking, right? It's about our brains are social organs. They have to be around other brains. So while it's fun to FaceTime people and it's great, it's not the same as being in the same room and actually talking about stuff. So the research of gaming alone in your room versus gaming in a room full of other people is fascinating.
Sophia, so maybe you joining soccer. We were talking about this morning.
Did you join soccer?
Yep. The first practice is I almost missed it.
I know, I saw that.
The first practice is first week of November.
Have you played soccer before?
No. When I was really little, but that doesn't count.
Yeah. She's tiny.
We'll see.
She was like 5 years old.
My friends convinced me.
So, but we were talking about in the context of this application process, she's like, oh my gosh, I have the podcast. I have my leadership, role at LLS with her nonprofit. She has the immense pressure now. I think is what I get, from having done this college tour. I thought it was inspirational, and it probably maybe have backfired of like, oh my gosh, my grades need to be of a certain level, and not just the grades, but now I need to have the standardized test and I need to score in this level in order to be able to be competitive with everyone else that is applying. And
Even though I think standardized
and
tests
now
are a little stupid.
and soccer is starting. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do soccer when in fact I think soccer is actually going to be what perhaps makes this whole process maybe even more manageable, because you have an outlet and you have movement and you have
the
fun.
social aspect. Yeah,
It is definitely good. And we want kids to be, there's a really interesting discussion right now on what we call identity foreclosure.
Okay, what is that?
I know, isn't that interesting? And it's for young people who foreclose on this identity. I am smart. I am a soccer player. I am an athlete. And you find your identity in this one thing. And then when that one thing gets taken away, it's the end of the world. Right? I thought I was smart. I was in gifted classes in high school. I was all those things. And then I went to college and there was other gifted kids. And I was like, oh no. I was gifted in my group, but this is a whole other level.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm the goofy one, right?
Yeah,
and so
small,
I got my first like C or D in college, and I was like, I'm gonna quit. Like, I can't do this. I'm gonna go home. Like, I can't hack it. It's NAU. It's a public university. It wasn't Stanford or Harvard. It was like, this is a lot. And so I had to come to terms with this idea that I'd identified as an intellectual, and that maybe I needed to do other things. So then I started taking lap swimming classes and photography and public speaking to try different things to see what I enjoyed and what I liked. And so we want to open up identities, not foreclose identities. So doing things like soccer is going to be an opening up of saying, yeah, you're going to be a soccer player? No. Are you going to enjoy what you do? Yes. Yeah. So it's like, I can do stuff for fun. I can do art for fun. I can thrift for fun. I can do stuff for fun, because that is just as important part of the journey as foreclosing on, I have to get into this school or that school.
Yay.
And I don't mean to.
I like that he's saying this, because we have what they call a high reach, high goals,
of course.
List of schools, and then you have a medium reach.
Yep.
And a lower reach.
Low reach.
And what I like, it's not just
honestly,
ASU.
ASU to get into the honors.
She wants to get out of state. So there are some others in the
does.
lower and medium reach
that
I actually like the price tag.
Of course. Well, yeah.
And so that's another consideration, that I always bring to the table, for her. I'm like, well, there are those, and can you? Yes. And do you have what it takes? I think so. But look at, the financial aspect. Yes, there's the network, but could we spend 2/3 of what we would have spent on the tuition and instead put that into an investment property, and so on and so forth. Right. So we do bring this to the table where we try not to,
Well, and you and I relate on this, and that is that the universe collaborates for our success.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
We believe that.
100%.
And so the reality is it also doesn't matter.
And when the universe doesn't, I always feel like it's the universe protecting you. Like, for example, what I mean by that is there are some rules as far as height when you get into a roller coaster.
Sure.
And those rules are there, not to be broken, but to protect you.
Yep.
And sometimes, when we don't get what we want in life, it's probably because we're not ready yet, and this is the universe saying, I'm protecting you for the moment until you have the skills or the capabilities or the emotional resilience or can assume the responsibility and the risk that comes with that thing that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right now, you're just not ready for it yet.
Yep. Which is why I had to let go of what college I went to. I applied for a couple colleges. I got into all of them. But then when I looked at the price tag of what my scholarship was, and I was a first generation college student. So my parents would go visit with me, but they're like, we don't really know. Like, this is up to you. Like, you're the one signing the loans and figuring it out.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And I chose to go to a cheaper school where I got a bigger scholarship, so then I would owe less when I graduated.
Yeah.
And so that was a conscious choice I made, because I got into Point Loma in San Diego, which is like number 2, the most beautiful campus in the country. It's amazing. If you hit a home run on the baseball field, it's in the ocean. I mean, it's gorgeous. And so I was like, that's where I wanted to go. But it was a lot back then. Yeah. And so, which now I don't even want to know what it is.
Oh, yeah.
But it was one of those things. It was a private school, the whole deal. And so I decided to go to a public college because it was different. And what I realized is, at the end of the day, I've not once in all my, I mean, and I got multiple degrees. I got master's degrees and did the whole school thing. But I've never been once asked for my GPA. No one's judged me about my schools. So there's an element of it's all going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
No matter where you go, it's going to be great. It's about what do you do when you get there. And so NYU, super cool. Would be awesome. And also, you could just visit New York, right? You could go to ASU and just go on, like, hang out. Like, so there's like, we don't have to like foreclose and say it has to be this.
Exactly.
It has to look like this, because I have found that the things that happened out of nowhere that I didn't expect or didn't want have been the most beautiful things in my life. The community that I built at NAU, I'm still like best friends with these people, and they mean the world to me. And I may have not had that if I would have gone to Point Loma or somewhere else.
Yeah, that's important. Now, so right now I think she's getting this.
Okay.
But there comes a time during our days, you know, in the daily life where there's going to be a heightened state of emotion, of overwhelm. And in those moments, how do we as parents, how can we still get through to our kids? Like what would be a strategy or a tip that you have for me?
That's typically when the cortisol levels go up, right?
Yeah.
And that's when we've got fight, flight, or freeze. And so that's where I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know what to do. I'm just, I can't do anything. I'm stuck. Is that how you feel?
Is that considered procrastination?
That's different.
Okay.
But do you feel sometimes like
but
that?
when you feel super overwhelmed, what do you experience?
I kind of just sit there.
Stuck.
You sit at the end of the bed and you stare at the wall for 20 minutes and you're like, where did that 20 minutes go?
Yeah.
We call it disassociating.
Okay.
But also it's super normal. And it's the sense of like, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
And so that's when we have to let that cortisol decrease in our brain, so that we get out of that fight, flight, or freeze. And those are things like taking a walk, drinking water, doing some breathing exercises.
It's almost like stepping away from it because everything is telling you, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. I need to do something right now. But it's actually taking a step out of it for things to kind of like normalize from a brain chemistry standpoint, and you being able to now come back in a different state and kind of like sort themselves out faster, quicker when you're in a different state.
100%.
Yeah.
Usually sometimes that state of overwhelm, it like almost like puts me to bed. Like I don't know how to explain. Like I feel sleepy and I need to take a nap.
Because you're tired.
No. Honey, welcome to sometimes feeling like an adult. That you have so much responsibility and so much stuff to do that I freaking take a nap because I'm like, I'm going to need a nap in order to be able to deal with all of this.
But I take a nap and then when I wake up, I feel like my brain has organized.
Yes.
It's a reset. You need you need to disrupt the cortisol.
Yeah.
And so that's where the walk comes in, the nap comes in, whatever it is.
Yep.
But then the next step is to sit down and list everything you've got to do, and then to prioritize.
I always have a list going.
Totally.
Yep.
For me,
and
that's a great way to get it out of
top, here. Yeah.
Because if it stays in here, we go to Crazyville.
Yeah.
Right? Then you're just like, well, what about this? And this wasn't good enough. What about this?
I have my lovely reminders list, and whatever's at the top is the most pressing that I have to do.
Totally.
Okay.
So that's my process. I'll go for a walk. I'll take a little break,
and
then I'll come back. I'll write the list, prioritize the list, and then I can tackle what. Then it's bite-sizable chunks, right? What can I take a bite of? What can I do first? And sometimes for me, I eat my vegetables first because I don't really like them. So it's like, what do I not like in this list? I'm going to do that first. Because then I get to do the fun stuff I like.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. I want dessert, but I have to eat my vegetables first. And so I have to do that with my to-do list.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of kids that I think are also, it's not just in adults, overachievers. Like I see it, especially in the circle that Sophia moves. And it's not like she's not one either, you know.
I know. She didn't have a chance looking at her parents.
Yeah, and now
we're here for you.
From decades of working and accomplishing and basically making things happen in a big level, I really understand the effects and the marks that this constant overachieving basically leave in your body.
Yeah.
And what do you see that a lot of I know you said that you work also with kids with disabilities, but do you see on the other even those kids also perhaps even trying to compete with the like how?
So both ends of the spectrum aren't going to feel good enough.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
And some are like, what do you say? Straight A's. Well, but I should have got A+. Right? I always could have done more.
My school doesn't give me A+. Oh,
which
my
obviously
God.
drives you crazy.
Yes.
Which would be heaven for me. And then you see the other one where it's like, I'm not good enough because I don't spell well, right? Or whatever. So they both are going to have the same struggle, which is that good enoughness, which we know can be really detrimental, right? Really hard. And so that's where it's about talking about it. It's about bringing it out into the open. It's about saying, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling anxious. I don't feel good enough right now. This class is so hard for me and I just can't quite get it. That's where we can have those discussions and those reminders, because when we don't, those overachievers bury that deep, right? And then they explode. And that's what we don't want. We want to be able to unload our social emotional bucket so that we've got room for more stuff. But if we keep burying stuff down, and we have kids who bury stuff down, it will spill out in really unhealthy ways with partying or, fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
Getting in fights, whatever. And so we don't want that. We want to be able to provide ways for them to unload their emotional bucket. It's funny because this generation, one thing I love about them is that my generation was about compartmentalization. You're professional or you are personal. Your personal life and your professional life, they shall not meet.
Yeah.
So when you go to work, you leave everything at the door, right?
No.
And then when you come home, you are home and you let your hair down. This generation's like, that's insane. I'm me no matter where I go.
Yeah.
So if I'm at work, I should be able to use my phone the way I would use it at home. Yeah. Because why would I be different?
Yeah.
This is me. And there's something really healthy and pure about that.
Yeah.
That I love, because I've split myself up in so many different ways that's hard. That's a different type of hard.
So much more authentic, yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, it's just kind of about talking about it, sharing about it, being honest about the overwhelm, and even with your friend groups, being able to talk about it. Because there are so many kids who assume, I want to be like Sophia. Look at all she does. I want to be like Sophia. That's amazing. But when Sophia goes, it's hard. I'm not good at juggling. Things fall through the cracks. Now she becomes a person. Now it's not about, I want to achieve. It's not about the gold stars.
Yeah.
It's about being a holistic, healthy, balanced person.
Yeah.
We don't use the word work-life balance anymore in corporate America. We use the word work-life harmony. Because they should not be in opposition. It shouldn't be work-life on two separate fighting. Yeah. That's not all right.
I like that.
Because my work is part of what I love.
Work-life balance, this actual phrase has never been, it never made sense to me, because I'm always okay, I'm living one whole life.
Yes.
And my life is filled with all of these things. And there's going to be seasons of time where I'm going to prioritize this one or this one or this one, but I can't, again, maybe I'm too focused.
Well, but that's why it's work-life harmony. Because sometimes work will take a little over. Sometimes life will take a little over. Yeah. And it's both okay. Yeah. And if we can have harmony in both of those things, then I'm going to enjoy going to work. And it's not taking away from my life. It's incorporated into my life. And that's what we want. And that's what we want for kids, right? Is for them to have a holistic, incorporated life. Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about communication amongst friends.
Like slang? No cap?
Well,
oh my God.
Well, we have a situation which I think is fantastic, is that her school is a small school. Yep. Which means that you have to...
You know everyone.
You know everyone.
And if you don't like someone, you still have to be friendly.
Yes.
Because you cannot create... you can create... I wouldn't say enemies, but someone in opposition, or that doesn't exactly agree with you, and that's okay. I believe that that's fine. You can have different points of view. It's just don't be mean about it, or don't.
Well, there's personality clashes. Yeah, that happens.
And that's fine. It's just like I believe that you can be friendly with someone, but when I see people getting into like fights or arguments, I'm like, it's not needed, but
Yeah, or productive.
yeah.
But you did go through a situation where you,
Okay.
I think you had a personality. I don't know if it was a personality
I don't
clash
know
or
what
fight,
happened. I
but where
don't know.
basically there's a friendship that
Yeah.
all of a sudden unravels,
Yeah.
and
don't know
where
why.
Yeah.
where you
I have
don't
an idea
where you
Sure.
really don't know
or
why,
a couple
and
ideas, but
and at this point, Sophia is like, we're still friendly. I still love her, and
but she's not.
But
She's not being
whenever
the
I am
friend that
interacting in the same
need.
activity, like for example, they went to Fear Farm to get to
Scared.
haunted houses.
Oh my
to get
god,
scared.
scared.
And originally, this one person was not part of the group that was going, but then
Sure.
all of a sudden, she became a part of it, and now. I think you had fun, but it changes
The dynamic,
now the
yeah.
dynamics.
I almost
and-
had like it put me back into the. So what happened basically is she little by little she would start criticizing what I would say, and so it made me want to talk less and limit my speech less.
Yeah.
And I tried switching it to different wording, but that still didn't work. So I like got quieter and quieter, and that also affected my ability to make friends with other people, because if
Yeah.
I don't talk, how am I supposed
Right.
to engage
Now you're just
with
the
you?
quiet kid,
Yeah, exactly.
which is fine.
Yeah, which is also
But
fun.
that's not you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, little by little, and it got like to the point where it was just outright rude, like the things she was saying, or little snarky comments, things
Yeah.
like that. It was not good. So over the summer, it kind of like fizzled out, and then actually this past weekend we all went to Fear Farm, and when I heard she was coming back, it almost put me back into that mindset of, oh, I have to be careful on what I say. And I'm like, and I thought I had gotten over that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really care. Like,
Yeah.
And in one way, you think, okay, it's okay to set some boundaries,
Yeah.
and
Which I have.
But in another way, I always
believe I
think
have.
walls are not conducive to openness in your heart, to
Yeah.
yeah.
So how to reconcile this, or what is a higher
this-
perspective to a situation that could basically help Sophia, in a future situation where this gal is part of
do you have to
an
like
activity.
actually like confront the person and talk it out, or do you have to like what is?
That's a great question. What do you think?
I don't know.
Well, to be honest, here.
Because we keep on,
Yeah.
I almost feel like this keeps on coming back.
Yep.
And I think it's because there's not real, true, open resolution to it. And as a result, we're dragging it now months.
And I think it might be helpful if you go to a bigger school and you don't run into them as much, and then it kind of just fizzles out that way. But in the circumstance that I'm in, I'm in a small school where I always see this person, or like they're always around. We have friends in common.
Yeah.
So I'm bound to run into them.
Of course.
How would you start this difficult conversation if Sophia decides, oh, you know what,
Yeah.
I'm going to basically put on my big
Because
girl
it happened
panties.
today again. Because
Put on my big girl panties and actually start, and instead of shying away from this difficult conversation because I've been trying to just stay friendly because it's such a small school.
Right.
How can we
I don't
start this
think is a bad
conversation,
thing.
and what are some strategies during
Yeah.
the conversation so that we can maintain some sort of
Communicate.
friendly, because we need to coexist in this community for
Yeah.
the next
Of
2 years
course.
still.
Well, first of all, I'm going to push you on something, which
Okay.
is putting on your big girl panties is not great. Because there are big girls that don't do this either, right? Like,
okay.
I mean, to be fair, there's adults who don't know how to have boundary setting conversations. And the problem is it starts here. That's why I love that we're talking about this right now.
Okay.
Because this is practice for the rest of your life.
right.
And so if we look at it like that, then it's really great to start having those boundary setting conversations.
Right.
Because right now it's just annoying. You know what I mean? But at some point in your life, if you go to college and you go away, you're going to have to set real boundaries with real people who are going to try to press them. And that's really hard to do. So this is great practice for that time. So if I was going to start that conversation, I would do something like, hey, can we chat about some stuff? I want to talk about some stuff that I've been thinking about. And so you get permission, right? Because we want to ask permission. You don't just want to unload on someone because they're not ready for that. And then they're going to be defensive and awkward. And then it's just like, well, that didn't work. Like, well, of course it didn't work.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, you did this and I know you did it and I saw you doing it. And it's like, well, no, that's not going to get anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, sound guy. Screaming into the mic in a second. I get a little dramatic at times. And then for me, I'd say, all right, this is how I'm feeling right now, is that you seem to critique when I talk and when I see use certain words, and that just makes me feel uncomfortable. And I don't like that feeling, and I like to feel more comfortable. Do you think we could work on that? Or is it something you're willing to work on with me, right? And so you become a partner in the fix.
Yeah.
And if they say, you're weird, or no, that seems crazy, or I don't know what you're talking about.
Then that's
cool. Then that's your answer. And
Should
then
she bring basically the past, as in like, this is how I felt in the spring, or do we when if something happened, for example, today, address that in the moment rather?
Exactly. So that's what you're doing is if you start bringing in ammunition from the past.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, you've been saving up grenades, right? And you're
Yeah.
like, last December, I said this, and you said this, and then it's like, what's happening? I don't remember last December.
Yeah.
So it's way better to say, you've been critical of me in the past, or described words, or made fun of me this way, and I didn't like that. So I'd like to not have that happen again. Is that something that we could talk about or partner with together? And you're not doing it in a group where she feels like she's got to save face. You're doing it one-on-one, right? And then if they say yes, and then it happens, you can go, hey, that's what I meant. That's what I was talking about. That's the boundary you just crossed. And if they go, oh, and they continue to cross it, then that's a conversation of having consequences, which is, hey, so you continue to cross this boundary. Still doesn't feel great. So I'm going to take a break from our friendship. So if I know you're going to be in an event, I'm just not going to go. Or I'm going to go and I'd like you to not, right? Or whatever you can negotiate. And that's hard and it may not work well, but it's good to practice that type of a conversation. It's going to be messy. It's going to be fumbly. It's going to be awkward. And the first 7 seconds are always weird. But after the first 7 seconds of getting into it, it's great.
Yeah.
It's always starting the conversation that's the hardest.
Yeah.
Right? And so once you start doing it, it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. Because in our mind, we think it's going to be the worst thing in the world.
Right.
Like when I was thinking of asking somebody in junior high to dance, it's like I felt like I was, in slow motion and they're like, no way, weirdo. And you're like, ah. That never happened, right?
Yeah.
They were like, no, I'm good. And you're like, okay. And you just scurry back. It wasn't that bad. And so, I mean, they never said no to me, but that's a whole other thing. Just kidding. You know who you are. Where the difference is that you've practiced those kind of conversations so that you get stronger, bolder, braver to have them when they come up again.
Yeah.
And that's what this practice is for. I'm not saying this is going to repair the friendship. I'm not saying this is going to work out magically. It may not. But the practice of standing up for yourself, the practice of clarifying the relationship is huge. Brené Brown says, clear is kind and unclear is unkind. So when you're clear about what you expect as a friend, it's much easier to meet those expectations.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, I always tell Sophia, okay, there is this that we see from the other person coming at us.
Yeah, there's
but
always two sides of the story.
But there's always two sides to the story. How can she then address that part? Because I heard you say, number one is ask for permission to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Number two, you said, I noticed that, yesterday or today, you did this. And when you do this, you make me feel this way. Is there a way that you could work or help me work on this? Was some of your, your verbiage right now.
Yep.
So that this doesn't happen again. Like, how can we work together?
Yep.
So you're working the problem. So I heard that. But then there's this point of view of the other person as well.
Yeah.
I understand that I make you feel, but this is why I'm also reacting that way. Or, that's why I would like to hear that, but
Well, that's also a good question to ask, right? And say, how does that sit with you?
yeah,
How does that make you feel when I say that this makes me feel this way? And maybe that's their opportunity to engage in that. And again, not everyone's going to be mature enough to have that conversation. And yet, we want to provide the opportunity. Because years later, they may say, oh man, I learned a really great technique from this person I knew who confronted me. And I was embarrassed, so I just ran away. But now I realize like that was really helpful. And so it may be a learning moment for everybody later on, may not be in the moment.
Yeah.
We don't know. But providing that opportunity is going to be really helpful.
So we provide the opportunity. What if, okay, now we hear her feedback and how she feels.
Right.
When it lands in Sophia, it can go one of two ways where it's like, oh my gosh, I totally see your point.
Yep.
Or another way
Like,
that
still
it lands
doesn't
is
invalidate
still
or like
no, but the other thing that how it could land is like you become even more upset about whatever it is that response is.
yeah.
So
there's
I
opportunity.
always like to look at a few steps ahead.
Of course.
So in that situation, then how to respond to this in this
Yeah,
conversation?
if it gets heated and it gets emotional on both sides, that's when it's good to say, you know what, let's revisit this at another time.
Step back.
Right. And for me, my kind of way of dealing with that personally is I'm a letter writer. I want to write a letter about what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, because then they can sit with that letter and respond. My father and I, when I was 18, I thought I was a man in my house. And I realized real quick, I'm not the man, right? My father was the man. I'd never paid for toilet paper or toothpaste, but I thought I was a man. And so we didn't get along my senior year of high school. And looking back, rightfully so. I was not kind. And I remember.
That's hard to believe.
I know, right? Well, I was a man. I knew everything. You don't know what you're talking about. I know everything. It's not true. But he wrote me a letter and slid under my door one night. And I read it, and I wrote him a letter, slid under his door. And we spent almost probably a couple weeks writing back and forth. And it really helped bridge that connection of me going, I guess I do see that point. Because now I can go back and reread it when I'm calm, and I can kind of gauge like what I'm feeling with that letter. So for me, that's how I would do the next step if it got overheated and emotional. But I'm a letter writer, so it's up to you, right? I'm not saying it's foolproof or that's going to work, because sometimes that can go the other way, where now your letter's posted on Instagram and you're like,
Yeah, that's the problem.
I don't know. Like, I didn't have that problem.
That's the
right?
problem.
I had a pager. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, that wasn't going to be
exactly.
a thing.
No, or I've heard of people like take a screenshot of the text and send it straight to other
So that's
people,
why I like
so.
in person talking, because that I didn't have that problem with my generation, but your generation might have that. And the thing is it may be worth the risk. And like, so you're posting on Instagram that you're laughing that I cared about my friendship. That seems odd, right? Like, okay. But yeah, there's a possibility that can happen. And then it's also take a step back. If you can revisit it, great. If not, that's your answer.
Yeah.
Right?
I think this is an amazing strategy, an amazing approach, Sophia. I think we've talked about it with several of our guests, and I think the time has come where I think that we can't shy away from that difficult conversation anymore.
Or we invite her to be on the podcast as a fourth chair right here,
No.
and we just all have a giant therapy session, which is totally my vote.
I'm good on that one.
I'll head it up. I'll take care. It's fine. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, a
I love the
mediator.
facilitation.
Yeah, a
I love
mediator.
mediating. I love mediating so much. It's like, okay, what I hear you saying is
Yeah. With the hand motion.
exactly. I have friends who are married and they're like, "Can you mediate between us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Now,
That's what happens when you're the communication guy.
yeah, absolutely. Now, what if there is a mental health component sometimes to when we're having, and I'm not saying in this situation with Sophia, but just in general, I'm just thinking, you know, as an adult, like even as a boss, and you have to engage in such a difficult conversation. Like what precautions or what considerations would you have in that situation?
Yeah, so if it's going to be a boss-employee situation, I always let someone know what I'm about to talk to them about in advance.
Okay.
So it's, hey, this Tuesday, I'd like to sit down and talk about this situation or this thing that I'm having a hard time with. Because I don't want them to feel like I'm
ambushing them.
exactly. That's the last thing you want. See me in my office. Nobody likes that. Right? But if you say, see me in my office for this reason, now I can kind of prepare, right? I can prep.
Yes, teachers pull me aside. They're like, Sophia, can I talk to you real quick? I'm like,
And your anxiety goes up and you start packing your bags. Like,
Yes.
I'm getting kicked out.
Yep.
Mom, come get me.
like, can you see me after class? I'm like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong?
Right. Are there cameras around? Like, what do they catch me doing?
I love that I'm hearing about this.
Right?
No, but it's then about like the stupidest thing. I had anxiety for nothing. They're like, oh, I was just talking to you about this. I really liked how you like giving me compliments sometimes, and then sometimes it's not. But that's besides the point.
But
the unknown is what's scary.
Yeah.
And our mind fills in with, our minds always go negative.
yeah.
When somebody texts us and it's all caps, what is it? Why is it all capitals?
Exclamation.
Yeah,
or,
we think people are yelling.
emphasis.
And the reality is they
yelling,
may not. Maybe
yes.
their caps lock's broken. You know what I mean? I don't know. But we always our brain goes to the negative every time. And so when someone says, I need to talk to you about something, it's like,
Yikes.
no, thank you. I'd rather just not be friends ever again than have this conversation. And the reality is we have to let them know, hey, I want to talk to you on this date about this thing. And so they can kind of mentally prepare. I can mentally prepare. We can have that conversation. And then if you notice people are physically turning red or they're over sweating or they're getting uncomfortable, we can say, hey, do we need to put a pin in this and come back? Or is there something I can do? Like making sure they've got water is an important thing. Making sure they have an out is also an important thing.
Empathizing, yeah.
Yeah.
An out. I love this.
Yeah.
Always giving the other person basically an opportunity to elegantly
Yes. It's called dignity. And that's what we want. We want to give people dignity.
Right.
Not
Don't
sitting across from a
corner
table.
them. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sitting on the same side with them. That's just a symbolic way of being like, we're in this together. And I want to see how we can figure this out.
So where can you see yourself having this situation, with this friend? Like, do you think that this is something that you could basically initiate, put the ball into motion at the end of school rather, so that she can have a fantastic day at school, and only at the end of the day say, okay,
it
can
would
we
have
talk
to be
about
after
can we
school.
talk about this?
Okay.
I
So
would do it like on a Friday, so I don't have to see the person on the until the Monday.
I hear
but
you.
that's not the best idea.
But the
probably.
research would say there's a book called The Science of Timing.
Okay.
And in
after
the book,
school though, so it doesn't like influence the day, I think, and influence the work.
I hear you.
I know.
And your point is valid. And yet there's this other component that we have what's called the lark mentality, most of us, where our energy, our excitement, our intensity, our passions are heightened in the morning.
Oh,
and then
you're in a better
then
disposition.
you hit a lull in the early afternoon.
Yeah.
And then you kind of start rising again towards the evening. And so if that's kind of our moods, right, then we kind of want to flow with those moods. And so they figured this out.
What about an early evening? Hey, so and so.
Yes.
Can I drop by your house? Because she doesn't live very far.
Yeah.
I would love to discuss.
Oh, at her house,
Or can you meet? Let's go
Yeah.
on a hike together. Let's go walk together. Because I would also say walking shoulder to shoulder is helpful because making eye contact can be intimidating. And so sometimes it's good just to walk and talk at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be way more easier to save face that way for both parties.
Yeah.
So I find that to be
many
more
strategies,
effective. Like, hey, let's just go for a walk and
Steve
talk.
Jobs is, I've read, a few
Notorious.
of books and notorious for taking walks with people that he was going to have difficult conversations with.
Yes. It's more common typically for more of that masculine energy, but I think it's good for anybody.
we take a hike. Then I'm stuck on the mountain with the
Okay,
person.
maybe not a hike. Maybe not. But your driveway's a hike. So like
Yeah,
there's
but-
like different ways of hike, right? Like it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, Sophia. So
Okay.
So maybe
Yeah.
maybe this
Right. Early
consideration
evening would
of
be good. I just think they would say in the book they talk about how asking for raises, having hard conversations are really easier to do in the morning because people are a little bit more accepting of what it is.
Yeah.
Whereas at the end of the day, you're kind of already tired, you're already emotional. And so it's really hard. That's why they say when couples fight at night before bed, stop, go to bed, and then in the morning you're going to have fresh eyes. So it's much easier to have harder conversations in the morning versus at night where it's like, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I can't think straight.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You're saying things that you don't.
Right. You just keep repeating
Yeah.
the same thing over and over again. It's like, what are you talking about?
We could have an entire podcast
Yeah,
on
that's
just
another-
relationships.
Oh,
you know,
that's-
communication
Not
and
for
so.
me. We're going to talk about dating. This will be a much longer podcast.
So okay, so then let's zero in on the youth and on teenagers. What are because I know I want to honor your time too. What are the 3 biggest pieces of advice that you would have, for teenagers out there right now, either dealing with difficulty communicating or anxiety with what, and stress and what's happening in either in their home or with school, or that are dealing with some kind of a mental health issue? Like what would be some advice there that you could leave either the parents or the kids that might be listening?
Yeah. For me, it's the first is find a healthy outlet.
Okay.
Right? So it's what is that? Also, that comes with recognizing how it starts in your body. So when I get anxious, it starts in my feet and my feet get warm. And then it moves up my body. So the second I know that and I start to feel my feet warm, I'm like, walk. I need to walk. Or I need to drink water. Or I know I need something. Right? And so it's really recognizing where it shows up in your body and then moving as a part of that. A lot of times anxiety, whenever we sit down, it settles in our body. So getting up and moving moves it through and out of your body. So it's about finding that healthy outlet, right? That's important. Another thing is talking to your parents about it, talking to trusted individuals about it. Because the more we don't talk about it, the more we bury it,
Also,
the harder it gets.
And then they
So
can't
journaling-
help you.
Yeah, they
Like
can't
if you
help
don't
you.
tell them, they can't help you.
Well, I would love for a kid to tell me I'm stressed because I'm like, bro, same. Let's talk about it together. Like, what are you stressed about? I'm going to share what I'm stressed about. Let's talk about it. It's okay to be overwhelmed. It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to have mental health struggles. It's okay. What's not okay is to not know about it. And then you're dealing with it alone.
Yeah.
That's not fair. That's not fun. We're in community together to figure this out as a group. So for me, it's like, how do we have that? How do we have that conversation? We build those connections. And that's how we build trust, which is an important part about growing up.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, the other piece of advice I would say is have fun. You're never going to be this age again. And there are so many kids who aren't taking the time to be kids. And I know you can relate where sometimes it feels like you didn't have a good child. I started working at 13, a job to save up for my first car. And I'm so thankful my parents gave me that option. So I don't want to say that was a bad thing. But what it did do is it made me focused on work and achievement more than play and fun.
Yeah.
And the research on play and how important play is to our mental health, to our physical health, to our enjoyment of life is
Not
wild.
just for the kids, for us
Yes.
Yeah.
But it starts at this age.
Yeah.
So it's like play, have fun, go do goofy stuff. Go get an old camera and go film your friends making plays and that's what we did. I don't know. But being goofy and like having fun and singing loud in a car and doing like skateboarding or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Doing goofy stuff is such a great way to relieve stress and to have fun and just to play.
Yeah.
And I want parents to play with their kids.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really beautiful when kids can see their parents in a different light.
Yeah.
And not always, are you done with your homework yet? Or there's a part of that that's important.
Not often.
When we travel, you get to
Yeah.
have
And
that
that's
part of
fun.
us, I think.
Yeah.
And on a daily basis, I think.
I've seen your dad wear some funny hats.
Yeah, but I think we need to be, at
His
least for
unicorn
me,
shirts.
a more conscious effort of bringing play.
Yes.
More.
Well, you don't like card games. That
Yeah.
would be my preferred.
Oh my gosh, somebody just got me a card game for my birthday. It's called, I'm going to mess it up because it's like 5 words.
Cat, dog, something.
Taco Cat, yes!
Taco Cat
Yes!
Goat Cheese Pizza. It's literally sitting in the other room. It's
I
so
played
fun.
it last Thursday. It was so fun.
It's
I was
stressful.
It's the
like,
Slappy.
It is.
Slappy. Yeah.
Oh, I lost in like 5 seconds because they had all been playing it all week. And so I just came in and they were like, we got this for your birthday. And I was playing it. And I was like,
It's so
oh,
fun.
I win. I lose
I
every
loved
time.
it.
But it is intense. I hit myself in the head a lot. It was crazy.
Normal.
I know,
play.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, who do I hit? What's happening? I don't.
Oh,
all the
yeah.
things. Groundhog. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so fun though. So it's like play is important. We
Yeah.
had family game night in my house.
Yeah.
And so that was a good part of play.
Yeah.
Because we got to do that kind of stuff. And
Yeah. I grew up playing
Cash flow for kids.
Catch Flow for Kids
thank you,
and
Robert.
Monopoly.
Right. But also, you know what else you did growing up, which I vividly remember, is your parents
Painting.
hung up every
Oh,
one of
yes,
your drawings.
in my
And
room.
Every
Yep.
one. No, not just in your
Everywhere.
room.
Oh, on
Everywhere.
the wall.
On
Yes,
the back
I
wall in the
remember
kitchen.
that.
There was everything you've ever drawn in your life. And your father hung it up like it was a work of art next to his art.
Because it was.
It was. And they valued the art in you. And I think that is part of
I
play.
do remember that.
It's like, that's fun. Let's draw together. Let's go painting. Let's do stuff that like is
You wanna
enjoyable.
paint?
We did do painting together.
See?
Yes. We need to do that again.
Yes, please.
Go to a break room, break stuff.
Adam,
Oh,
you
that
have to
sounds
come
fun.
to
Yes.
get
Yeah, you
us
wanna
back
paint
into
with
this.
I do. I tried to paint because I wasn't ready for therapy yet. So I was like, I'm gonna paint my emotions, and I got this beautiful white canvas. Talk about perfectionist. I got this beautiful white canvas, and I looked at it, and I was like, I'm gonna unload the dishwasher. And then I came back and looked at the canvas and was like, I'm gonna light a candle, put on some music, maybe that'll help. And it
Yeah.
was so hard to get started, but once I started, so great.
Yeah, that's true.
I love like just getting into it and doing it, but you have to start.
Yeah.
That's usually the hardest part.
Awesome. Now, where can people, learn more about what you do?
Yeah.
You, like I said earlier, and when we started the podcast, you do speaking for big corporations. You just came from speaking at SRP, which is the big
Yeah.
utility company here, and talking to their teams
Yeah.
about innovation, about the, working with the next generation, about improving communication skills. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so my website is adamleebrooks.com. Super easy. Also, you can go to drivealog.com. It's like dialogue, but drivealog for the cards. But yeah, you can reach out. You can find me on Instagram, adam.lee.brooks. I've got a lot of people that reach out there. I love it. I always want to be a resource because I know so many people that go talk and do events and stuff, and then they disappear and you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
So I make it really a good effort. I try to, at least, to reach out. Anybody that reaches out, I reach back. I want to give resources, have conversations, tell me what's going on. I have so many students or former students who are like, this is what happened. What should I do? And I'm like, oh, it's great. I love that stuff. So I'm like, try this. Let me know. Try this. All right. How'd that go? Because for me, it's about learning.
It's learning.
Right. And I'm still learning. I mean, I'm a communications professor, and also I still struggle with it. I still am not always a good communicator.
Yeah.
I apologize a lot. I'm impulsive a lot. So it happens.
Yeah, but this drive-alog cards, like if anyone can go there, you said drivealog.com.
Yeah.
They have been really transformational, and I know how they had an effect on our ability to really open up and discuss topics, with Sophia.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much.
Yeah. I always get really good feedback from families about taking them on trips and all the stuff they hear. I love hearing the feedback of like, oh my God, my kid said this. And I'm like, yes. How'd that go?
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us.
Thank you guys for having me. This is so great.
Any parting words? Any parting question? You feel incomplete? You think you got this, and you can go and start this conversation?
I think I do.
Okay, maybe we need a episode part 2.
I know, I want to hear how it goes.
Yes.
Ooh, that's a good one. We're like, dun, dun, dun.
Yep.
To be continued. Dot, dot, dot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to our audience that allows us to come into their space, into their home, into their world. Thank you so much for another episode, being with us in another episode of the Becoming Wealthy podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Share this with an important kid in your life or an important person in your life that needs, to start difficult conversations or that needs any help with all things communication. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.